All right, everybody, this is In Liberty and Health. Welcome back. I'm stoked to have all you guys here with me tonight. It's been, I feel like, a little bit too long since I did a show about lifting and stuff like that between all the foreign policy stuff that's been going on. So I'm really excited to have both guests back on today. The last time I had both these guys on, it was a really, really good chat. So I found out before the stream that they're both apparently from Alabama and don't live originally weren't too far from each other at one point, so this should be a good show. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. Check all the links below to figure out what I got going on. Obviously, tigerfitness.com and LMNT for all the world's best electrolytes. So I guess without further ado, let's rock and roll. What is up, everybody? My name is Kyle Matovic. I am the host of the In Liberty and Health podcast, where we talk all things liberty, health and wellness, and beyond. My hope is to encourage and spread the message of liberty and physical and mental well-being. I hope you enjoy all the topics we talk about with our guests. We're on all major streaming platforms, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Man, I'm doing as good as anyone can do getting buried by his 13-year-old son on leg day.
I'm not going to apologize for not being on this podcast because I got to go see Metallica. So if that's a problem, kiss my ass. Okay? All right.
Welcome, Max and Fat Dave, or as he knows, Cole. It says right there, I almost hit 315. I didn't notice that
I was this close.
You know what, dude? You did better than me. So I guess real quick, Max, go ahead, reintroduce yourself. You were on the show before, but just in case I got some new listeners between now and then who aren't familiar with you.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? My name is Max Coleman. I'm an Aries. I like long walks on the beach. Sushi's my favorite food. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, what's up, everyone? I'm Max. Last time I was on the show, I was in the middle of data collection for my master's, and now I am a recent master's grad out of Lehman College under Brad Schoenfeld. And just to keep things short and sweet, I basically study how we can manipulate training variables, things like rest intervals, deload periods, stuff like that, to see how we can make people as jacked and strong as possible. More so on the jacked side, though. I don't care so much about strength.
Mm-hmm. Oh. And Cole, same deal, God?
Yeah, I'm Cole. I do a podcast called Tower Gang. That's mainly what I do online. I've recently, in the past year and a half, gotten into lifting, so that led me to get on Kyle's show because I've really got into it and started I went on the same route that Max did. I guess I would more like on the reading side of it. I went into the pure science lifter side, trying to go as optimal as possible. But yeah, I do a funny show on Wednesday. Actually, later tonight, I'll do our show. It's a comedy show, but we have a lot of fun there. So go check that out. And also, I almost hit 315 this week. I was on bench, not on deadlift or anything. It was 315. I sent the video to Kyle, got right here, and then just fucking stopped. But I was really tired. I ran a half marathon this weekend, so I actually deloaded last week, and you just mentioned that. And I probably didn't deload. I just kind of just stopped. I only worked out 3 times last week. Yeah, bro time. And then destroyed the deload by running a half marathon and then going for a max week this week. I was like, I'm an idiot, but whatever.
Well, you know what? Maybe this kind of brings us into a good start to the conversation here. I had Bill Campbell on about 120 episodes ago, I want to say, and we kind of talked about cardio killing your gains. And Max, I'm guessing you probably know a decent bit about this as well. He seemed to be of the mind that cardio killing your gains is a bit overstated. Now, obviously doing a half marathon, that's probably going to greatly hinder recovery and probably put you in the hole a little bit. But it seems like if you're in bouts of a half hour or less and you're not going all out balls to the wall, you'll probably be okay. What's your read on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, Bill Campbell's the guy, capital T, capital G. So I'm not going to sit here and argue with him. And I might even be more, more liberal side as far as that's concerned in general. Close on a politics podcast using the word liberal like that, but
we're all cool here.
So I agree with him entirely in that it is incredibly overstated, the Jeff Cavaliers of the world telling us that cardio is killing our gains, right? I think that you're absolutely right. As long as you're not entering into territories in which it's affecting your ability to recover, which, like you said, has to be pretty substantial. Yes, a half marathon probably is in that area where you're not maximizing boosting either your strength or hypertrophy gains. However, there is even some data to suggest that cardio might actually enhance muscular adaptation. So there's this really cool study where they took untrained individuals, it's important to note, and had them perform. It was within subject. It was really cool. So they did, like, I'm botching these specifics, but they had, like, let's say 4 weeks of cardio based training for one leg, and then 4 weeks of resistance training for the both legs following the 4 weeks, and the leg that did cardio in those 4 preceding weeks actually saw increased hypertrophy compared to the leg that didn't. There's a bunch of theories as to why that might be the case. Maybe like increased capillarization, so it allows for like just more energy production throughout sets and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm not going to talk too much about that. It's just to say that cardio is not killing your gains, and after a certain threshold, cardio might actually be making you more jacked than not.
What I also like, I've noticed whenever I do have some sort of cardio, I was bulking throughout this I've been on like a not a pure powerlifting split, but kind of a mix of power. It was like power building and bulking at the same time, so I was not doing any cardio. But when I was doing cardio, it felt like I was on long sets, especially the compound lift squats, heavy deadlifts, anything like that. I would just get like absolutely destroyed, like just my cardiovascular, just really like, especially I don't know what it is about leg press. If I do like leg press, I'm destroyed for the rest of the workout. I'm out of breath. I can't recover. And then but if I am doing like cardio, I feel like I've been able to do more volume, and so that could just help, just within just that level. And that was just when I was doing cardio at that time. It was more hit cardio than like what they say is like, oh, hits, you don't want to do hit. It was just, but that was just what I was doing at the time.
Yeah, I think it could go. I mean, I don't think hit is going to kill your gains either.
Yeah.
I basically don't think anything's going to kill your gains. We can talk about that if you guys want to. It's an interesting topic. But yeah, I think that I kind of don't know where I stand on this with respect to like more advanced trainees and people that have like, requisite cardio where they're not gassed after a set of bicep curls. If that's the case, go do some cardio because or go see a doctor. But assuming someone's like kind of in a normal range as far as cardiorespiratory fitness, so VO2 max and stuff like that is concerned, it probably doesn't matter like doing cardio or not, mostly because if you are someone who's doing kind of more high rep sets like you were saying, Cole, that is going to give you the cardiorespiratory adaptations that you need to continue doing sets of 20 and 30 and heavy compound lifts. But generally, I would recommend staying away from like the 20s and 30s for things like squats and deadlifts and stuff like that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine doing a set of 20 squats? Like after a set of like 10, 12,
people
15,
do them,
yeah, dude, that's
hey, if you're watching like the old school, not Mike Mincer,
Tom Platz.
Yeah, Tom Platz. He would talk about always doing like,
for sure,
20, 30, 40 reps. I think he has the record for 405. I think he did it 25 times.
I thought it was 500 for 20 something. For
was
28. I could be completely wrong.
I know it's up there. Like it's like an
yeah.
obscene amount of weight for an obscene amount of reps, and it's just like I don't even know how that's possible. Like just
and
cardiovascularly how that's possible.
Yeah, exactly. Tom Platz is dope and super jacked, and I don't take advice from someone with 15-inch quads saying that someone with 45-inch quads is wrong. But the dude, like, yeah, he is literally engineered. Like, I don't think Tom Platz was born. I think he was engineered in some lab by a Russian scientist to say, okay, we want this person to be ideal for squatting. He's got like short little femurs, pretty short torso, and he can just squat with like the most beautiful upright stance you've ever seen. And unfortunately, us taller individuals such as myself aren't built like such. So I don't recommend squatting in the 20 to 30s.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, so I guess one other thing I wanted to talk about as well was this new study that's been making the rounds. I know Milo Wolf, I think even Mike Israetel, Lane Norton.
I already know what study you're about to ask me about.
Yeah, everybody had comments about this. Cole, I don't know if you read into it too much, but I just kind of listened to everybody's opinion on it, and I'm curious your thoughts, Max. Was the 52 sets of quads per week. For me, my volume on quads is, I want to say, maybe 16 sets at most per week, and that's usually, I do like 4 sets of leg press, and then 4 sets of belt squats, 4 sets of regular squats, and then 4 sets of leg extensions. And that's usually like my quad work for the week. And I do, those, the former 4 or the former 2 and then the latter 2 on different days with, different muscles. 52 sets of quads a week, I feel like I would be like gasping for air. And my understanding was that they also had pretty advanced lifters. So, like all the lifters that were in there, if I recall correctly, they had a 315 squat at minimum.
Yeah, they were impressive. Like it wasn't just your average, like had been lifting for 6 months to a year untrained subject that we call recreationally active, right? These were lifters. And yeah, the volumes they were doing were crazy. And it is important to note that while it was 52 sets in those like last 2 weeks, they built up to that starting at 20 something sets. I wish I knew it better considering it's like the study to talk about right now. But shout out Enes et al. Or Enes et al. I'll never remember how to pronounce his name exactly, but really good researcher and a really good study that has certainly caused some controversy amongst a lot of especially the Mike Menser crowd. My thoughts on it though, or because I'm with you, Kyle. I think my quad volume right now at least is like right around 13, 14 sets a week with like lunges, some Smith machine squats, and some leg extensions, right? And the idea of doing 26 sets for quads twice a week is kind of unfathomable to me. Now, that being said, these people, it was somewhat of a specialization phase, right? Which is what people are throwing on. They did a little bit of
Gotcha.
they did a little bit of hamstring work after the sets of squat. I think they had like 3 sets of, man, I can't remember if it was RDLs or hamstring curls or something like that after the quad workout twice a week. And then they had, I think they just did whatever upper body stuff they were going to do anyway, which I doubt they stopped doing upper body work. I mean, these are well-trained lifters. You're not just going to stop.
Don't skip
lifting for
torso
your upper
day.
Yeah. What are you doing? Like that's like the most you're going to skip arms. Like no way. So I do think it kind of lends itself a little bit to the specialization conversation where it's like, and I think it lends itself to the conversation of like ramping volume, right? Because they added anywhere. I think it was one group added 4 sets every 2 weeks and one group added 6 sets every 2 weeks or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I do think that it lends itself to, if you're going to do it, grade yourself towards that, meaning like gradually increase. Don't be like, oh, 52 sets is optimal, got to start doing that this week. You know, that's just a surefire way of giving yourself rhabdo essentially. But I do think that, you know, the study showed what the study showed, and I don't think that it's safe to say or fair to say that we are certain that that's not achievable, that's not attainable, right? We can't just say because it goes against like what we've thought previously that there's no way that that's how the study actually came out, and there's no way that 52 sets is what people should be doing, right? So kind of long-winded there and didn't even really say a full opinion, but if you have a more pointed question, I'm happy to answer.
Now, was there any other tests or studies that have been done that kind of supplement this in any way, or have you seen, or is there any, like, I know it has been high volume, I don't know if this high volume. I'm the one who wore a cutoff, so
I had to wear a polo. I wanted to look a little bit nice. So sorry. I'm
just
sorry.
Any similar studies to this within, you know, maybe not just legs or, you know, maybe shoulders or anything like that has done this high volume work before and seen similar results?
Yeah, so this study is corroborated by a lot of, I can't just start name dropping, unfortunately. I'm not a beast, but I know Brad has at least one where eventually they were doing, I think, like 45 sets per muscle group per week, so still pretty crazy. Yeah. And they did see like better growth, but not to the point of statistical significance, which is not even, you know, it's a kind of, it's a whole other bag of worms in of itself. So yes, this study is corroborated by other studies looking at high volume training. There's not that many. I think there's somewhere like 4 or 5 studies comparing like less than 20 sets to more than 20 sets per week. It's just not super common to have that high of volumes, probably for like practical reasons. Like I can't imagine like the researchers in this Enes study doing 52 sets a week, they had to have been in the lab for many, many hours a day, right? I can't even imagine. But the point is that the data does seem to suggest that as you go, as volume increases, number of hard sets per week, you do see increases in size, right? Now, once you get past that, this is what is true. Once you get past that 10 to 20 set range, each additional set that you start adding is going to have like a nominal increase in its effect, right? Like a repeated bout effect or diminishing returns is a better way of putting that, right? Yeah. So from 0 to 10, the difference between 0 sets and 10 sets, huge. The difference between 10 and 20 sets, substantial. The difference between 20 and 30, pretty small, and then it just keeps going and it gets asymptotic. But I think the important thing to point out here is that we have not found that volume yet that people always talk about. Because remember, this conversation for a long time has been, there's an inverted U where it gets better, it kind of plateaus a little bit, and then you start actually regressing in the amount of muscle that you're able to build, right? And we just have not found that volume yet. Now, that logically makes a lot of sense, and I would imagine that's obviously the case. Like almost every system biologically works that way. We just haven't found what that actual threshold is yet. I think that's important.
Because at some point it starts eating into your recovery, actually, of the muscle
Right.
itself, where by the time you go on to the next session of actually working out, they haven't fully recovered, so you're actually just still destroying, and not your muscle hasn't recovered from what it did the last session, which I still can't believe. Like, what were these split up into? What was it? Was it like 2 days a week?
It was 2 days a week, and it was 9 sets of squats, 9 sets of leg press, 8 sets of leg extensions, or something like that, I believe.
That's like
because remember, they worked up so at the end of the study.
quad gauntlet.
Exactly. And then they asked him to do hamstring work afterwards. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. I mean,
Sounds like that Rich
hamstrings at least-
Piana 8-hour arm workout. That's what this sounds like. But like,
Exactly. So Milo did it. I don't know if I don't know if he was on post his workout, but I was actually with him in the applied muscle development lab.
Oh, no way. Okay.
In Lehman, or at Lehman in the Bronx. And I was with him while he did the workout. So, and Lyle McDonald sent him $1,000 like he said he would. Shout out. Because Lyle McDonald, for those of you who don't know, said that he would send $1,000 to anyone who recorded themselves actually doing the workout, because he was under the impression that there was like no way anyone could do that, right? Milo did. Got $1,000, and it took him about an hour and 45 minutes, an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes. So it was a substantial workout, no joke, right?
Yeah, I know. For me personally, my hamstrings are very, very sensitive to volume and especially intensity. Like if I do a set of RDLs with like over 200 pounds, really controlled, then my hamstrings may be wiped out for like 5 days afterwards.
Yeah.
So like I typically go for like a lot of hamstring curls, and then I kind of incorporate obviously deadlifts. I do a lot more sumo now. I was doing trap bar a couple months ago, but I've kind of worked my way back up to about what my working weight is now, which is about, anywhere from like 455 to like 510 on a sumo deadlift. But yeah, if I do RDLs, I'd be fucking torched. So I couldn't imagine doing that many sets of squats. But like you said, they kind of worked up to it. And Brad had wrote the original, I think it was a meta-analysis that suggested like 10 to 20 sets per muscle per week is like the ideal. And people have started to, I don't want to say tar and feather that, but they kind of almost like say like, oh, well, this is like dated now. But it seems to me that that's still probably like a good recommendation for most people, because that's a range like, okay, well, I think it's pretty easy to get like 5 sets per muscle in per workout. So if you're going 3 times a week, then you could easily get 15 sets in if you're doing a full body split 3 days a week. And that's why I think like a decent bit of people are going to follow that aren't a Sears is, maybe us three, we're probably going to go maybe 4 to 6 days a week. So we may be able to just, disperse that volume throughout multiple days.
Yeah, I think so too. And also it's like, it's important to remember, like I said this a second ago, but like they were just training quads. Like they did a little bit of hamstring work, but they were pushing quad volume. So you can't say definitively, right, that if we trained 52 sets for every muscle, that would be ideal, right? Because then you might actually be cutting into recovery, right? So if I try to do 52 sets for my quads, hamstrings, calves, delts, all blah, 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 that might be too much, right? So who knows? We can only say for sure what we found from that study itself, right?
Also, does I'm guessing, because I've always heard there's been that debate over volume versus intensity, kind of a thing. And so, where does how did they take into account the intensity of these of the actual quad work that they were doing? Were they using RPE? Were they doing RIR? And then was it okay?
I can't remember if they used RPE or RIR, but I do remember that it was either RPE 8 or RIR 2. So they left 2 reps. I can't remember how they documented it on the paper, but I do know that they left 2 reps in reserve on each set, except for the last set of each exercise. They went to absolute concentric muscle failure. So yeah, and with your question, while we do to more like principle based answer to your question, while we do think, and there kind of has to be a relationship between intensity of effort and volume, the literature right now is kind of pointing towards we should be taking both levers and pushing them as forward as far as we can, because Zach Robinson's paper, shout out, really good paper and a really good researcher. All of the guys at Data Different Strength suggest that, yeah, maybe it is better to train closer to failure, right? Now, there's a lot of caveats in that paper that he'll be the first to tell you about, but it's the way that it's the direction that the literature is pointing towards, right? Same with volume, right? And all of those, this is a really important thing to note, all of the papers that we have comparing volumes, right, to lower volumes to higher volumes, regardless of the paper, the RIR is the same. Like almost all of these, they're pushing to concentric muscle failure or voluntary volitional failure or whatever it may be, or they're pushing to 2 reps in reserve or whatever it may be. So while there is a relationship, there has to be a relationship between intensity of effort and the amount of volume you're capable of recovering from. The direction the literature is pointing right now is saying maybe we should be taking a lot of sets really close to failure a lot of the time, essentially, which sucks.
Yeah, it does.
I get why the Mike Menser crowd is so mad right now, because I'm mad too. I wish that I could get maximally jacked off of 1 set a week, but seemingly I can't, and the literature is seeming to suggest that as well.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of people out there that are a big fan of, and I'm sure you know about the X3 bar, where they say all you need is 1 set, per muscle, per workout. And that's always seemed kind of silly to me, because I mean, I bought the X3 bar early on in the pandemic, so that way I had something to use when I was at home. But I mean, the idea that you would just need to kind of do 1 set, you're hardly even warmed up on a first set. And especially if you're not doing, like a sufficient workload. So, like if I did 1 set of deadlifts to failure, it would take me forever to get all the way up to, let's say, 400 pounds and then do a set to failure. Because if I just, threw 400 on the bar and tried to go to failure right away, I'd go straight to Snap City, it's been such a silly idea, but it still seems to peek its head up every here and there. And it even seems like some people fall for this that I wouldn't think should. But, I think you and I talked about this last time you were on, Max, that it seems like for your more isolation movements, you're probably fine doing a set to failure or taking that to failure on the last set. So, tricep extensions, bicep curls, lateral raises, calf raises, whatever, you could probably take those to failure. But the squats and the bench press and the deadlifts, you might not want to go to failure on those.
Yeah, my opinion on that has actually changed a little bit. I think that not drastically, because I still think, don't go to failure on bench press and squats, unless you have for literal safety reasons, unless you have the requisite safety precautions necessary, then be careful. But I think that people often overplay the, let's call it, systemic fatigue associated with going to all out failure. I think that while yes, you probably will see larger increases in whatever measure of fatigue we're taking here, going to all out failure, it's probably not going to preclude you from growing either, assuming that you're operating within normal volumes and stuff like that. So I've actually changed my mind a little bit with respect to that, in that I'm kind of more comfortable telling people to go a little bit closer to failure, even on compound movements now.
Now, I've also seen a lot of, this is mainly, I watch a lot of Jeff Nippard, I watch a lot of Mike Israel, and they're really pushing on the stretched aspect of on the eccentric part of the lift. Now, when you're factoring in, volume, intensity, where does then come in the range of motion / just technique of, hey, we're going to really stretch these muscles out on the eccentric. We're going to take it slow. Where is that? How does that factor in within the what you're going to see as part of hypertrophy in your muscles?
Yeah, so kind of shout out Milo Wolf once again, because that's where they're getting this, not exact directly, but he's kind of the one really pioneering this movement, so to speak, to we should be biasing towards longer muscle lengths just in general, right? And that's a really good question, by the way, Cole. How does that interact with these other variables, right? Because that is so important. The interaction between all of these variables is ultimately what's going to determine success in getting as jacked as possible, right? So I do agree wholeheartedly with Mike Israel, with Dr. Mike Israel, with Jeff Nippard, and with Dr. Milo Wolf with respect to we should be biasing the majority of our movements to longer muscle lengths, and we should be definitely not avoiding that stretch position in any movement if our bodies allow it, right? However, I don't think that it really affects anything to a high degree. I still think we should be going pretty close to failure when doing things like lengthened partials, right? Especially because a lot of lengthened partials allow you to go to failure pretty safely. And then I do think potentially that these volume numbers will come down ever so slightly with lengthened partials. Now, that's pure conjecture, is purely just my thought, my idea with respect to how it works. And that's just because we generally see larger, like higher measures of muscle damage with lengthened partials, right? We expect to see more myo damage in general when we're spending more time in the lengthened position, right? So it might bring down volumes a little bit, but to speak a little bit anecdotally, so science hat off, bro hat on, I've been using lengthened partials a lot, and my volumes haven't really changed very much at all with respect to most of my muscles, in which I'm switching almost exclusively to lengthened partials, right? So I do think there's an interplay there, but it doesn't seem to be so large that it's actually making a pragmatic difference in either the amount of volume or how close to failure I'm going, if that makes sense.
I almost think it's kind of a cool. I'm actually so. I told Kyle about this. That's why I bought. Jeff Nipper just put out a new split. Basically, it was a pure hypertrophy split. So that's what I was going to try it next, and that was something he did. So I think it's the last set of like every exercise is some type of different variation of, so it would be either lengthened partials or doing myo reps or doing drop sets of some sort. And to me, I'm just like, that just kind of sounds fun as part of just the monotony of going to the gym every day, doing the same thing. It's just like, hey, this is a different way to like, just on the last set, go all out, burn out your muscles for like doing some myo reps, instead of doing the full like tricep extensions, we're just going to do just that top top part, just of the lengthened partial part. And I was like, that just sounds fun. Even if I don't see any significant gains from just doing those final sets like that, it just seems it would make me more, excited to get in the gym and try those out. Like, and I think that's a good mental part of it for certain people, especially if you've been doing it for a while, and in the gym 4 to 6 days a week.
Yeah, and if I can piggyback off that, Cole, I think that, so this is something that I've been kind of preaching for a while now. The more and more time that I spend like delving through this bullshit, let's just call it. I mean, I'm talking about rocket science here, right? You realize like, man, a lot of this shit works. Like most of this shit works.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to get as jacked as possible. And a lot of people aren't losers like me who are uncomfortable going to the gym and doing the same thing for a decade on end, right?
Yeah.
And the really beautiful thing about this is, because like when you first start out, especially Cole, you can probably empathize with this. When you first start out getting into like the evidence-based side, right? You want research and you want the Jeff Nippards and the Mike Israels of the world to tell you exactly what to do on Tuesday, because that degree of clarity is really nice, right? But the more you get into it, you're like, you know what? It's actually kind of nice that this study found no difference, because now I have a lot of autonomy and I can be like, oh, I like this more. I'm going to do this. And it's not going to make a difference in my physique. So I say that not every road leads to Rome, because they don't. But most of them do, assuming road is just being as jacked as possible, right? So I literally have a note in my phone about like, most of this stuff works with respect to getting jacked. So just do the stuff that you really enjoy. And that includes like switching things up constantly. Like I just did some I was in a rush to get back to my apartment so that I could film this with you guys. So I did some drop sets at the end of my workout. So like really squeeze that stuff in.
Yeah. Well, two things there. I like how you kind of point out how like most of the stuff works. That's the same deal with nutrition, obviously. I think you and I might have talked about it before, but I did carnivore for like 2 years. And then now looking back, I'm like, how much gains did I leave on the table because I was so nourished for that period of time, and I wasn't able to push as hard, and I just wasn't eating enough calories. Versus now just doing like a flexible dieting where like literally after this I'm going to go downstairs and fire up my Ninja Creamy and have protein ice cream and absolutely like love my life.
Right.
Like how much did I leave on the table because I didn't do stuff like that? And the other thing I wanted to bring it back to is Max, you did a whole I think a research roundup on drop sets versus just traditional training. So if you kind of want to highlight some of your findings in that.
Yeah, so it was a research roundup in a way. It was a meta-analysis. So it was like we took 5 different. Well, we took more than 5 anyway. We took 5 studies comparing drop sets to traditional training. So drop sets, for anyone who doesn't know, is just where you perform an exercise to or close to failure, and then you immediately drop the load by anywhere from 10 to 15%, and then perform as many additional reps as you possibly can. And you can drop as many times. So you can go from 15 or 20 to 15 to 10 to 5, or you can just go from 20 to 15. There's really no like universal understanding of like how we're supposed to actually go through that, right? Or universal definition for how we should do drop sets, both in the literature and if you ask 3 bros how to do drop sets, you'll get 3 different answers. But we found some pretty cool stuff. So we found that there was basically no difference across all 5 studies between strength and hypertrophy when you averaged all the findings together. Now, with strength, there's some caveats to there that we'll get into in a second because I'm skeptical. But with hypertrophy, it was really interesting because I do think that there's probably no difference, even if you stretch these studies out longer than they were conducted for, probably not a huge substantial difference between just training, doing an exercise and resting 3 minutes and then doing it 2 more times versus just doing a drop set with 2 additional drops, right? There's probably no difference there at all. However, those that were performing drop sets trained with, I think it was less than half of the amount of time as the individuals that were training with traditionally. So that's the same amount of gains in half of the amount of time. So pretty incredible. So that was like those were the big findings. Now, I think the caveats to the strength thing are that the majority of the loads being used in these 5 studies were in that like 8 to 12-ish rep range, right? So we wouldn't expect big differences in one RM strength between groups. However, there was one study where they did bicep curls comparing like high load to low load to drop sets. And they found that the high load group did increase strength substantially more than the drop set group, which makes sense, right? And there was also a study by Fink et al. Where they saw improved tricep extension strength. But they measured their like tricep extension strength in the 12 rep range, so we couldn't use it for a meta-analysis given like our a priori inclusion criteria, right? So all of that is to say that drop sets probably aren't ideal if you're looking to get as strong as possible. My caveat to that is that if you are someone who's pressed for time and you're interested in getting, stronger, just perform that first kind of like initial set, maybe in like a heavier rep, maybe in the 3 to 5 rep range, and then do your subsequent drops from there to keep you in that, more so like 8 to 30 range, we'll call it.
I have seen, I guess it's been termed like mechanical drop sets, where it'd be more of like instead of, you don't change the weight at all. You just change your technique to where you do cheat a little bit more. So maybe it's you get 10 reps and you're doing strict, nice, good curly movement. And then you're like, hey, I could maybe do like 1 more if I was doing real strict, but I can do like 3 or 4 more if I let those shoulders come forward a little bit and let that like, was that in any of the studies, or is that something that you've just on your own, you've anecdotally you can see, be like, hey, it kind of does work the same, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think that I would like to redefine mechanical drop set there, because that's just cheating. I would call that just cheating, which is, and I think just calling it cheating is like adds a connotation to. Like, I don't give a fuck if you use your hips a little bit on like a bicep. Am I allowed to cuss on this podcast?
Oh yeah,
it's okay.
Oh, sorry.
It's in the intro. You're good.
I was just making sure. Yeah. So like that, I think is just cheating, kind of like ego lifting to a certain extent, and I would generally advise against that. It's probably fine. It's probably not going to you're probably not going to get injured because you're using your hips a little bit more. In fact, we just wrapped a technique paper with Dr. Pack. Dr. Pack kind of led the paper, and I was fortunate enough to be involved with it. And there's very little literature looking at like stuff like that, right? Where you're allowing for a little bit more momentum or a little bit more ego when lifting, as opposed to being a little bit more strict. There's like almost no data on that whatsoever. So I can't speak to that empirically. But with respect to mechanical drop sets in general, I think they can be really cool, and another really fun, time efficient way of doing it. So like another one could be like where you're doing bicep curls, right, with a supinated wrist, like so normal bicep curls, and let's say you get to 8, and you could do, like you said, 1 more if you kept supinated, but you might be able to get like 3 more if you went to a hammer curl or something like that. Like that would be kind of a cool mechanical drop set. The utility there, again, I don't think that's going to like yield you any major gains or anything like, or even any better gains than just failing with a normal supinated. But it can just be like a fun little thing to do. I don't think that there's anything magical about it. Another form of mechanical drop sets that people have been doing lately is these like set extended length and partials, where you like do a pull up and you could have done one more pull up all the way to your chest, but you can do like 10 more pull ups if you pull like just to your forehead, right? Those I don't see like a strong rationale for, because then we're just taking length and partials and making them less hypertrophic theoretically throughout the entire set. Like I would rather someone just do a strict straight set of length and partials rather than finishing a set with length and partials, just in general.
Okay.
Makes sense. Gotcha. I think you mentioned last time you were on, you were also doing a little bit of research into like the effectiveness of creatine, because there have been, the highest volume of studies showing that creatine's like beneficial and good for cognitive abilities and all this other stuff. Did you get around to finishing that, or what were your findings there?
Yeah, so that study was led by, it was another meta-analysis. That one was led by Ryan Burke. Shout out Ryan Burke. You should have him on your podcast. He's really good.
I'd love to.
Yeah. And so we did finish that. Well, he finished that, and I was, again, lucky enough to be a part of it. And the findings were not that crazy. We found slight, so there were actually are shockingly less studies than you would think on younger, well-trained individuals, right? And I think, oh goodness, this is so embarrassing. The study was written a minute ago, so I don't remember it super well off the top of my dome. But I think it was something like only 5 studies. And we did find a slightly decreased effect size compared to the normal studies looking at creatine, because studies previously were looking at just improvements in lean tissue. So like increases in lean tissue mass. And that can be kind of conflated given that water is lean tissue mass. So we were looking at studies that directly measured hypertrophy either through ultrasound, MRI, or DEXA analysis of muscle mass, right? And we found that it still is worth taking creatine. It might not offer as much of a benefit as we once thought, but it still offers more of a benefit than any other legal supplement for muscle building that we're aware of. So not huge benefit, but still worth taking and unbelievably cheap. Creatine monohydrate, shout out. It's super, there's no reason not to take it. Even if we did find that it's not as effective as we once thought, it's still effective and it's still worth taking, in my opinion.
So you're saying that we shouldn't go all in on testosterone?
Probably wouldn't put a bunch of money into testosterone if I were you guys.
What about ashwagandha? And the next one that's about to come up soon, that's probably going to be another random name that everybody's going to jump onto for 2 months before it gets debunked by literally everybody out there.
Someone will make a lot of money off of those 2 months for sure, unfortunately.
Yes. It was actually
Cole,
really cool.
Oh, sorry, good.
Oh, I was going to say, just on creatine, not necessarily the lifting side of it, but I was, my wife was pregnant, and I was like, I wonder if creatine is fine for because pregnant women, basically you go through the list of what they can't have, and it's a mile long. And they're like, no,
just random stuff you would never think.
Yeah, I know. But they actually said creatine for pregnant women is actually really great for them. And I was like, okay, it's literally, there's nobody that should not be taking this. It's almost a universal. I told my grandfather is 85. And I was like, hey, it's great just for mental health, for just mental capabilities, cognition. And he was like, oh, okay, maybe I should take it. And I was like, and it's cheap. That's the coolest thing about, like you said, it's $30 and you'll get 2-3 months worth of daily supplement. And it's better than any just vitamin you can take or, multivitamin you can take, at least for seeing actual results in the real world.
Yeah. And on top of the cognition benefit, the cognitive benefits of creatine, because those are a little bit equivocal, meaning we're not super sure. It's pointing in that direction, but we can't say so very confidently. The muscle retention and the improvements that you would see in muscle mass is also a reason for your 85-year-old grandfather or father to be taking them, right? It's just like you said, there's really no population that we found a negative for creatine use. So I haven't heard a strong rationale as to why you shouldn't be taking it. The hair loss thing is ridiculous. But anyway.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I was listening to Lane Norton on Bradley Martin's podcast. I want to say it was, yesterday and today. And I think the way that they came to that conclusion was that it increased DHT levels, which is supposed to
Hmm.
be associated with hair loss. But like none of the study or none of the participants in that specific study actually lost hair. It just increased their DHT levels.
Yeah,
So,
and it's one
uh,
study showing
yeah, and
increase in DHT. Like,
yeah, and I guess more to the credit of creatine, I remember reading a study, and this was back when I was carnivore. I think Paul Saladino, of course, used this, but I don't recall all the details of it. But they gave vegans creatine, and what they found is that they actually had better cognitive performance. But it's likely because they probably weren't supplementing with it, and also when you're a vegan, you're not getting a lot of creatine via your diet because creatine is mostly found in animal products.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So vegans seem to benefit more from creatine in every regard than meat eaters, obviously, or just omnivores in general,
Mhm.
for that exact reason.
Yeah, I've seen people kind of throw in stuff at I think it was Iron Culture had made a whole podcast, and I haven't watched it yet, about leucine, because I know a lot of Lane Norton studies that he did back in the day were on like mice and leucine, and it's supposed to be what the 3 gram dose is supposed to trigger muscle protein synthesis, 3 grams of leucine, and that's kind of been widely recognized like the most important amino acid. Has there been kind of any updates on that or more nuance around there? Like I see some people talking about, oh, well, these different amino acids, may do this. There's a guy I'm in a group chat with where he's like super nerdy about the science. He's trying all these different supplements and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I'm pretty relaxed until I start seeing, a lot of people say like, no, there's actually confirmed evidence of this. I'm trying to remember the one supplement he started taking, but I guess anything like when it comes to different amino acids, have you seen anything on that?
Yeah, so I haven't watched the is leucine really important episode of Iron Culture. I'm a bit behind, but I do
Yeah.
want to, and I'm sure it's an incredible episode. And I bet it comes down to I would have to watch, but I bet it comes down to like,
Mhm.
yeah, leucine does matter. Of course, it matters. Like it's an essential amino acid. We need it to
Yeah.
survive. Not only that, but we need it to kick off the process of muscle protein synthesis. However, you shouldn't worry about getting adequate leucine, assuming that you're eating enough protein throughout the day. So assuming you're somewhere between 1.6 and 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram, which is just anywhere from like zero point 0.7 to 1 gram per pound, right? You
Mhm.
probably don't need to worry about if your leucine content is up to par. I don't have anything like more nuanced to say than that, unfortunately, just because it's not
Sure.
really my realm. But leucine is important, very important. You need it, but you're probably getting adequate doses of leucine, assuming you're eating even suboptimal protein amounts, especially if you're someone who like us, like people in this sphere, like we eat a lot of whey on average. We eat a lot of like whey or meat products or protein supplements in general that all have like enough nitrogen in surplus, like enough amino acids in surplus to keep things going. So if you're getting the majority of your protein from whey sources or animal sources in general, you probably need even less than that 1.6 to 2.2 grams, right?
It's
So yeah, don't worry about leucine.
it's been pretty funny because my dad he lists as well as like he actually got me into it mostly. He's the one that but he like swears by he gets BCAAs and he takes them all the time. And I don't have the heart to tell him like, "Hey man, like he eats meat. Like he eats very much. He eats enough." And I don't have the heart to tell him like you don't have to spend, the $20 you do every like couple months to
For
refill your
tasty
BCAAs.
water.
Yeah, I was like, if you like the way it tastes, like go ahead, like knock yourself out. But I mean, just look on the back of your tub of this, like the tub of whey you get, and they show usually all the
The
BCAAs
amino
they have
acids,
already
yeah.
in there,
Yeah.
and you don't have to take it by it. But it's just funny because it's another one of those things, just like any of these supplements that have been, like hyper. Like pushed to a point of like you need these or you're going to be losing. You're leaving gains on the table if you don't. And it's like,
Yeah.
man, it's honestly within nutrition. There's probably not a lot out there that is actually like that. Of like, hey, if you don't take this one thing outside of just eating enough protein, it's really like you can get 99%. I mean, they killed it. It had-
Yeah,
They did a good
yeah.
job. Yeah, he said, "Oh, whoever first marketed BCA's really hit it out of the park."
Though that
Like,
guy
okay.
and the people that somehow marketed C4 to be somehow the best pre-workout for throughout the whole early 2000s, whoever
Oh
did
my
that,
god.
and got it for some reason. This random not even I don't know how, but C4 somehow became like the industry standard. At like if you go into any gym that sell stuff there, it's always C4 that is there, and every 18-year-old high school broccoli head is taking it before their workouts.
Dude.
Go ahead, go.
Yeah, I remember being in high school, and I used to go to GNC when I first started working out, and I would drink the non-stim pre-workout and the stim pre-workout as soon as I would leave work. I had 2 bottles of water driving up to the gym, and I would just pound them. And they were both little things of C4, and I just remember my heart fucking beating out of my chest, and my friends were like, dude, I'm worried about you. You're gonna like die if you keep taking that shit.
Yeah, I don't know what genius decided to like got behind the C4 or the BCAAs. Mm-hmm. And your dad probably is fine to keep drinking BCAAs.
Yeah, he's totally fine. I'm just that's why I was like, do what you want. It's your money.
It's that meme. Yeah, it's the meme of the swimmer in the pool dumping water on his head.
Yeah,
it's exactly what's happening if you're eating enough protein, but it could be worse theoretically than pouring water on your head in the swimming pool, because there is some evidence to suggest that if you consume BCAAs in high enough quantities, your body starts competing with the metabolization of those. So you actually stop metabolizing the protein as well, like whole protein with a complete profile of amino acids, like the full essential amino acids that you need, which could theoretically result in less muscle growth. But I don't think that that's something that your father really needs to worry about or anything like that. I don't think that's something that anyone needs to worry about. But given that there's only negatives to BCAAs and theoretically no shown positives, please stop spending money on BCAAs. Yeah,
it's more just a waste of money. It's like you can spend it spend it on I don't know, like just go get
more creatine,
a nice steak just spend the $30 on a nice steak once every month instead. It's literally
wasted for nothing except for potentially worse gains. Like that is literally all you're paying money for at all. So yeah, I think it's ridiculous.
So, Force Swami asks, does Max know anything about acetyl L-carnitine? Isn't that supposed to be some kind of like, I've seen it marketed as kind of like a metabolism or like a fat booster.
I don't know
too
literally anything about acetyl L-carnitine, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, I know. Whatsoever. I think a lot of supplement companies typically market as like some kind of fat burner. I know that what the hell is it? CLA conjugated linoleic acid was another one that's been marketed a lot. And then like a lot of the fat burners have like green tea extract and
the green tea extract thing.
I can't remember some of the other stuff that's in them. Yohimbene's another one.
I will say I don't know anything about that supplement, but I can tell you that if you're taking a fat burner, you will know it because they are miserable. Like one, you're probably if you're taking a fat burner, it's either you're taking nothing, like a sugar pill, or you're taking a fat burner, like clenbuterol, and you'll know it because the side effects of taking fat burners are like miserable. Like your body is either not fully digesting the nutrients that it's supposed to be, like you're basically eating food that is passing through you before full digestion, and you like have miserable shits because of it, or it literally increases metabolism to the point where like your body is like burning up, like you are like, because a byproduct of metabolism obviously is heat, and if we're increasing metabolism to the point of enough for it to be making a big difference in your fat metabolization, right, your body temperature goes up like significantly, and it's just apparently a miserable. Like you listen to bodybuilders talk about peaking for stage when they're taking fat burners, like it sounds like a miserable process. So you'll know if you're taking a fat burner, and there's also pretty negative health detriments to doing so. So
what are y'all's thoughts on Ozempic, with just how it's become so big lately? Not necessarily in the lifting community, which I guess sometimes
it's just like people in general,
but just people like and how you think that's gonna work out. Just because I've just been seeing, like you've seen, there's a lot of pictures now of like celebrities that used to be like pretty big and that have all slimmed down really drastically, really quick, and everybody's just like, oh, okay, so this drug comes out, everybody's taking it now, everybody's getting pretty thin, but like it just seems to, I don't know. To me, I would be afraid to get on it just for nutritional reasons, but I wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, if you're like us, you probably don't need it because it's probably better to diet down slowly and maintain as much lean mass as possible. my wife is an EMT, and she says that like a couple people that she works with are on it, and they're losing a ton of weight. But my understanding, and I'm guessing Max would probably know a little bit more than me on this, but my understanding is that like okay, so it slows your gastric emptying, so it just completely demolishes your appetite. But there have been a lot of research poured into like where they've seen that people they lose like half muscle and half fat. Now, I think that some of those studies were done in people that weren't resistance training. So it's possible that if you were resistance training and, had sufficient protein, maybe that would be less. But like, if you can lose that weight naturally through cardio and proper diet, you're probably a lot better off than taking a pharmaceutical drug that will destroy your appetite. And only that, when you crush your appetite like that artificially, you're not learning the behaviors of actual, caloric restriction or adjusting your appetite to not, be so large that you can't lose weight. Max.
Yeah, so I actually am on a different side as both of you. I'm big
Okay, cool.
team Ozempic. Yeah, like I think it is. I
Okay.
think it's quite literally a miracle drug that's going
Mhm.
to end the obesity epidemic.
Oh,
And uh, I think that the reason that these individuals might be losing a substantial amount of muscles for the very reason you just said, and
Sure.
we do have data to suggest that if you're losing weight at a rapid pace, assuming that you're not lifting and you don't have a lot of fat to lose, you're going to lose a substantial amount of lean tissue. So I
Mhm.
think that the reason they're losing a lot of muscle is not because they're taking Ozempic, but it's because they're losing weight very quickly and because they're not
Sure.
resistance training while they're doing it. I think that the side effects of Ozempic are seemingly nominal compared to the side effects of obesity. And we
Sure.
also don't know what the long-term effects of Ozempic are. We think we had our first 5-year study that just dropped. The human race. I was not involved in that in any way. But there was the first 5-year study that just dropped with respect to Ozempic, and look, results are seeming dope. And I think a lot of
Okay.
people this is so that we're getting a little bit outside of, well, very much getting outside of my realm of research and my realm of expertise. But
Mm.
when you talk about obesity, people often don't think of it as a disease in any way.
Right.
And we often think of it as and I'm not saying that you guys were saying this by any means, but people often think of it as a lack of willpower or a lack of education,
And
right?
it's not. It's
Clearly isn't.
behaviors.
Yeah. Well, it's
Mhm.
one genetics play the heritability of obesity is huge, right?
Absolutely.
The lifestyle choices obviously have an impact, but I think that to say that obesity is strictly because of willpower is obviously misguided. And I think that you said this, Kyle, and I think this is often an argument that people say, where they say that people are using this drug and they're losing this weight, which is great. However, they are not learning the principles of how to eat healthily or to live a healthy life, right?
Right.
However, uh, that is the same issue that we've been having with respect to obesity forever, right?
Yeah.
Since
yeah,
the dawn of
It's
time,
true.
where these individuals are going to the doctor. The doctor says, okay, this is what you should be doing to lose weight. Do it. They don't do it because it's not that simple. It's not as simple as
Right.
telling someone to eat less and move more.
Yeah.
And they don't do it and they stay obese. The alternative is that they go to the doctor. The doctor says, okay, here's Ozempic, and you should use this in conjunction with all the same things we've been saying for the last several decades. They don't do it, but they're losing weight. I know which one of those I'm picking, right? I'm picking,
Yeah.
like, I understand and I do agree that Ozempic is, to a certain extent, and even this is a bit too simplistic, putting a band-aid over a bullet hole. However,
Mhm.
it's the only band-aid we have. And it's seemingly a band-aid that is
Gotcha.
doing a damn fine job of improving this disease state, which is what obesity is, right? So yes, I do think that more should be done. We should be learning a little bit more before we start proselytizing the benefits of Ozempic. However, it does seem to be an incredible tool, and I'm personally all for it and its benefits to our society as a whole.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think it's a very, very reasonable take as well. I'm not a naturalist guy. I have a lot of followers on Twitter that are huge followers like a naturalist fallacy, where like they see some of the stuff that I'm making with protein powder and they're like aghast that I would put
Chemicals.
that I put chemicals or seed oils or processed food in my body. And I'm like, you realize like even that ribeye steak that you can't wait to down, which is loaded with saturated fat, that is processed as well. Like everything is
What does it
processed.
mean
You
to be
need
processed? Of course it's processed. It
right.
doesn't have fur
Yeah.
on it still, bro. Like yeah, it's
Yeah.
processed. I
Well,
don't think
and then
people
like
know what that word means.
Well, like, is the processing inherently bad or good? So, like, let's say I take a cookie and I load a shit ton of butter and a shitload of sugar into it and made it into something this big that was 600 calories. That is a very, very bad form of processing. But let's get a fat-free Greek yogurt. That is a good form of processing because you took a lot of calories out and raised the amount of protein that you're getting in a serving, and it tastes good. So, like, I'm not like this black or white processing is bad no matter what. Like, there's good processing. Protein powder is a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
That is a great form of processing food to make it more digestible to people. And once again, people can poo-poo this all they want, but like Cole, your grandfather, I'm sure probably experienced this being 85 years old. He's probably not able to eat stuff as easily as he was
Oh
when he
yeah,
was
he
younger.
said gastroenteritis, so he had to
Yeah.
have part of his colon removed, and then
Hey, shout
like
out.
basically, yeah,
I had part of my colon removed. So that's
yeah.
why I'm saying shout out. Not,
Yeah,
not that I'm just a big fan of that surgery or anything.
Shout out gastro, man.
Yeah. But like to that point, like he's not going to be able to sit there and eat a fillet, right? Or he's not going to be
Yeah.
able to eat a sirloin steak. That would be a motherfucker for him. So like we need to have the, curb to get to better health as low as possible. And this is why on Twitter a lot I'm always saying like stop demonizing all these foods, especially when we know like none of them are really bad for you. If your diet is entirely, just butter and, no fiber or anything like that, okay, you have a shitty diet. You should probably improve it from there. But like, if you're getting some seed oils and maybe a little bit of sugar, but like you're still getting in, let's say 20 to 30 grams of fiber a day, and your protein is good enough, you're probably okay. And if you're getting some artificial sweeteners in, let's say you drink diet pop, heaven forbid, I do. That's okay too. Like, just I can't stand these people who want to demonize people who are just trying to make an improvement in their health. Like, oh my God, you have canola oil. Who cares? If they're getting healthier, that's probably way better than, whatever seed oils could possibly do to them.
Yeah, I mean, the seed oil thing is fucking crazy. Like literally fucking crazy. Like,
Yeah.
you know that fat that basically every scientist and doctor thinks we should be eating more of? Yeah, that shit's bad for you. For sure, bro. All right, man. Like, thank you. Thank you for telling me that polyunsaturated fats are bad for me. That's really the thing that we should be proselytizing, right? It's ridiculous.
Hey,
and then even to your point, go ahead, Cole.
I was gonna say I am on the no seed oils, but like only in my house. Like I just have avocado oil and olive oil. Only like I will go out and eat whatever like fast food and not give a fuck. It's just like in my like usually I'll be like, okay, if I can control what I like, specifically what I can control like in my eggs in the morning, like I'll cook it with olive oil, like extra virgin olive oil. But yeah, but I know there's so I'm more on the other side of you, Kyle, but not on the deep end of like I literally there's a great one. I do follow it, Seed Oil Scout, which they're in New York, Max, but they will literally put out a map of what restaurants don't use seed oils, so that you can only go to like so people can only find like those. Which I was like, hey, it's a cool thing, but like I'm not that crazy. I'll go out to Chick-fil-A and I'll get the fried chicken sandwich and I don't care. Like it's good.
It's a little obsessive, but like when you start diving into the literature on it, you actually find that like canola oil is actually very cardioprotective.
Incredibly so,
All of yeah, exactly. Olive oil, same deal. Olive oil has I think they said that pretty much olive oil and canola oil are like the two best oils, and avocado is good from my understanding as well. I really don't think there are any bad oils out there unless you're getting like straight coconut oil, which like even the amount of oils that people generally cook with, if you're using a cooking spray, you're probably going to be all right. It's just like you don't want to put a fucking stick of butter in your coffee. Like that's when we're going a little overboard here. And even if you have like a ribeye steak or some brisket, I do every here and there, you probably want to pair it with a little bit of fiber to negate the potential bad effects of the saturated fat. Like it's not like if you have a fattier cut of steak that day that you're going to die the next day, or if you have a teaspoon of whatever seed oil you're scared of that you're going to die the next day. Like these things are very manageable.
And Kyle, I'm guessing whenever you were carnivore, you probably dove into that, didn't you? Like you
Oh,
dove
absolutely.
into you were like
I was super anti-carb, super anti-sugar,
because that guy
super anti-seed oil.
Dan Baker, is that his name? Sean Baker.
Sean Baker. I've had him on the show.
Yeah, he was just on Rogan, and I was just listening to it, and he was just and I was like, hey, he probably makes some good points, whatever. Like, and I was like, I just like eating meat a lot, so like I'm down with it. Like, but at the same time, like I also really like bread, and I really like like sugar. Like I'm sorry,
maybe have an apple every once in a while.
Yeah,
it's like,
I have I make the French toast every single morning. So
Yeah, I don't know who Sean Baker is, except for the director and writer Sean Baker, who made like the
really,
Florida Project
I'm
and
sorry, you don't know who Sean? He debated Lane Norton on a Power Project. He was on Rogan twice.
I'm not
He's
in the
like the
nutrition
king.
realm super heavy. Like
Sure.
I'm, I'm in it as much as the next guy who's literally an exercise scientist, but I'm not like I'm
Yeah.
just not like the stuff
All
that
right.
interests me a ton. Like
Sure.
so like debates and stuff like that. It's just like it's not
Gotcha.
ever going to be the thing that I'm tuning into. But Sean Baker makes really great movies. The other Sean Baker, I would imagine it's not the same person.
This guy's like
Uh,
he's just a huge carnivore, like one of the biggest like proponents and like putting out studies on it and stuff like that.
I think
But yeah.
that here's a good rule of thumb. There's a diet that tells you to not eat fruits and vegetables. Don't follow that diet. That's just my. If you take anything
Totally
from this
safe.
podcast whatsoever, that should be the thing that y'all take away. Any listener ever, if there's a diet that tells you that you shouldn't be eating fruits and vegetables, don't follow that diet.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe this brings us back to focus here. Is the Milo Wolf? I think when I had him on, I can't remember. I want to say this is over the summer, maybe back in like May or June. I think he said he was finishing up the paper that he was doing. Do you know what I'm talking about? And if you do you know the findings?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's his range of motion paper, I would imagine. I
Yeah.
would imagine that's the one. Yeah, yeah. So he found that there are less than 5. Now there's 5, but at the time there was less than 5 studies comparing a full range of motion to. Well, they found a bunch of stuff from the study, but I'm going to answer the stuff that's actually worth talking about, which is that when they compared range of motion, full range of motion training to range of motion in the lengthened position, so doing a bicep curl full range of motion versus just like halfway up, right? They found that they were actually individuals were growing more from doing a lengthened partial, right? Which threw a huge wrench in the whole full range of team full ROM and all kinds of stuff like that, right? So that was where the findings from his paper, and since then 1 or 2 more studies have come out further corroborating that. So there's, I believe, now 5 studies comparing a full range of motion training to a lengthened partial range of motion training. 4 of the 5 say that there's a benefit, and 1 of the 5 says that there's no difference at all, suggesting that this might be a good idea, training with a lengthened partial.
Now, I'm guessing that with those they kept weight and reps the same for all of those usually but what I've noticed is whenever I do length and partials is usually I can eke out either a little bit more weight or a few more reps, and I didn't know if that was accounted for or that it was something that was because I feel like that also lends towards you not only is it better if you just straight up comparing the two, you can also eke out a little bit more weight with each one, or a little bit more volume with each one, just doing because it's only half. Your muscle only has to go through half of the ROM.
Yeah, so they probably didn't match weight and reps. Well, they probably did match reps. So they probably had individuals training through the same rep range, right? They probably had individuals that matched for volume, right? They did.
Okay.
But they wouldn't match for weight because you're right. On some movements, like we were just doing the bicep curl example, you can curl more. However, there are some instances where you actually have to use less weight. So, like for instance, squats. Like I have to use far less weight for length and partial squats than I do for full range of motion. Same can go with the chest, except for like the back. Like the back, you're able to use a lot more weight when you do length and partials. Same for like the delts or something like that. But I don't think that the benefit there is necessarily that you're just able to do more because that wouldn't work out. For instance, like for the quads, where you actually aren't able to use as much weight as you are for a full range of motion. So I'm not going to postulate as to what the mechanism of action is there because we just have no idea. And anyone who says that we do know why lengthened partials are resulting in more growth is just wrong. But I will say that the data is pointing in that direction. And I don't think it's because you're just able to do more weight because, well, funny enough, you're not, which is actually a big correction from the first time I was on this podcast, which I haven't said this yet, but thank you so much for having me on. Not only once,
dude,
but
of
twice.
course.
I said that, gun to my head, I do think the length of partials are probably a little bit more injurious than full ROM training. And I hadn't really, I had practiced with it a little bit, but now I'm like months and months and months into having used length and partials. And I don't think that you're actually going to see an increase in injury risk because of the very notion that like you do have to use a lot less weight in a lot of instances for depending on the muscle group that we're talking about, right? So no idea why, but it is making people grow more, generally speaking. So
Now, I have
So
heard.
I posed this to Milo. I'm sorry, Cole.
No, you're
Real
good.
quick. When I had Milo on, I asked him like, okay, so would you think that this is kind of like, let's say if you were eating 3 meals a day of, let's say 180 grams of protein, if you bumped it up to 5 meals a day, you're not going to see a huge difference, but it's going to be a difference nonetheless. He seemed to agree that that was like a good comparison. Now that he's put out this meta-analysis, do you think that sounds correct or?
So I don't think it's a good analog because I
Sure.
don't think you're going to see a difference from 3 to 5 with respect to getting as jacked as possible, and I do think you are going to see a difference doing length and partials versus full ROM.
Okay.
So I don't think it's a perfect analog. Like I do think that it will make you more jacked doing length and
Sure.
partials. At least the data seems to suggest that, right? In context similar to the ones that the studies are doing. So I can't say confidently that you should be doing so for your
Sure.
hamstrings or your delts or anything like that. But your biceps, your triceps, your calves, your quads, and your glutes all seem to respond pretty positively to doing length and partials, right? However, increasing the amount of protein that you eat throughout the day, like assuming you're eating, let's call it 3 meals, I don't think going to 5 is going to make a difference at all. Now, to your point, because I think this is really the point, is that it's not going to make a huge difference at all, right? But it is going to make, like, let's call it a 5 to 10% difference in growth. So
That
I think,
seemed to be what he said as well.
yeah. So I do agree with him there for sure.
I kind of had two questions for you. One was mentioned like you didn't know why maybe this was. I know Mike Still talks a lot about metabolites. Whenever you do get in that lengthened position and you pause and you hold, that it does increase the metabolites within that muscle that will push hypertrophy. And then two, have you done or looked at any of the studies on not necessarily going the lengthened partials during the set, but after a set of actually stretching the muscle for 30 to 60 seconds, and what you've seen in the studies on that? Because I've heard of a few of those, and I've tried it. It hurts like a motherfucker. I mean, it sucks, but I want to know if I should keep doing it.
Both really good questions. One, I don't think you see an increase in metabolite sequestration just from doing length and partial. Like maybe you would see an increase in metabolite pools because there's kind of like somewhat of a more tension on the muscle, like more constant tension throughout the set. But I don't think you can say that definitively, and I certainly don't think that's the reason you're seeing an increase in growth, right? I think it's much more likely to do with, I'm not even going to say what I think because I don't want people saying that I said what I think with like any degree of confidence. But I think that with respect to your second question, yes, I do know about some of those studies. I was on one. Fortunately, it was actually the first study that I ever had published was an interset stretched study. Shout out Derek Van Avery. He's the one that led that. We had individuals who had their legs randomly assigned to one of two groups. Either you just did your sets normally or you did a set of calf raises and you did a 20-second stretch immediately after reaching failure. And those individuals did see an increase in growth in the soleus muscle. So your calves are made up of a bunch of muscles, but the two we generally care about are the soleus and the gastrocnemius, right? And the soleus did seem to respond positively to that stretch. Now, that being said, we were very confident that you would see an increase in growth following that protocol, right? However, the degree of difference was 1 millimeter. So, like, do I think that there's a difference? Maybe. Do I think it's pragmatic? Fuck no. Like, I don't, especially given how much the subjects complained about how much it hurt, like you just did. Well, like, doing a stretch, like a weighted stretch after a set is, in my opinion, unlikely to lead to any extra growth.
I had tried it.
Substantial extra growth.
I had tried it after doing. There was a couple ones, so I had tried it on chest, bicep, and back. So different for lats. So it was on chest. It was doing some cable flies and then doing a nice big pec stretch, which hurt so bad. And then doing the same with like bicep, doing some bicep curls, and then just like stretching out their bicep, and then the doing some I think it was just rows, and then going up and doing like a nice lat stretch. Every one of them hurt like a motherfucker. It sucks. Those are some long 30 seconds, where you're just hoping to finish it. And I guess afterwards your muscles kind of do feel good. I don't know if I noticed any difference. At the same time, I was in a newbie phase, so it was kind of like where the gain's coming from, just the newbie side, or that I'm pushing reps.
That's why research is so important. Like what you're talking about right now, Cole, is like why research is so important, because we do isolate variables, and we can be sure that if there's a difference between groups, it's because of this thing, not because I started turning my pinkies up more on lateral raises and my delts grew, and it's not because of the 5 grams of Vanadrol that I started running. Yeah, bro, for sure, it's your pinkies up on the lateral raises that cause that growth. So I couldn't agree more, Cole. I'm glad that we have these studies to confirm stuff that you were just saying, findings that you had.
Gotcha. I guess we could probably wrap on the deload stuff. So I breezed through the deload study that you did, Max, and I think Cole and I kind of talked about this a little bit too. And he also mentioned that he just got off at deload and then did the marathon. What have been some of your updated? What are your updated thoughts on deloads? And I think you did. I think I talked to you a little bit about the study that Bill Campbell did, where he looked at people, and it was kind of like a messed up way they did. They had people that trained consistently for, I think it was 9 weeks, and then they had people who took 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, or something like that. You know which study I'm talking about?
Yes, yeah, for sure. So there's 2 studies, and they're not out of Bill Campbell's lab, I don't believe, unless there's a Bill Campbell study that I'm not aware of. Which I'm sure there is, but I don't believe he did this one. It was 2 studies out of Japan from Ogasawara et al. And I'm sure I botch that every time I say it on social media. But they had individuals train for 6 weeks and take 3 weeks off, and for a total of 6 months. Actually, it was a really great study, and they found almost no statistically significant differences between groups. But I also, like you were kind of just alluding to, ran a study on deloads not too long ago. So I wrapped in May of this year, and we had individuals train for 9 weeks with the following exercises. So twice a week with us, 5 sets in the 8 to 12 rep range, 2 all-out failure of Smith machine squats, leg extensions, seated calf raises, and standing calf raises, right? And the only difference between groups is that one group trained for 9 weeks straight and one group trained for 4 weeks, took 1 week off, and trained for 4 more weeks, right? No differences in hypertrophy, but those that took a 1 week break actually didn't see nearly as impressive as strength gains as those that trained continuously. So strength was actually hurt by taking a week off, right?
Oh, gotcha.
And then more interestingly, in my opinion, because who gives a fuck about strength, was that we also did a readiness to train questionnaire at the end of the 4th week and the end of the 9th week. So those just asking questions like, how strong do you feel today? How mentally strong do you feel today? How was your sleep last night? What's your appetite look like? And we actually found that those that took a week off actually saw a decrease in motivation from week 4 to week 9, which is shocking to me, and increased muscle soreness compared to the other group from week 4 to week 9 as well. So very interesting psychological findings, in my opinion. Now, of course, there was no differences in growth. We didn't really expect there to be a huge difference there. I mean, we're talking about the difference of 2 workouts over the course of 9 weeks. We don't expect to see big drastic differences there. But the psychological findings that we found were very interesting to me.
Because I was
go ahead, Cole, sorry.
Oh yeah, it's because this was like a deload before max week, which I know that is kind of like, and it wasn't just a take the whole week off. It was a specific workouts to do during that deload week, which at the same time I missed 4 days in a row, and I was like, oh well, I'm deloading, so it should be fine. But I was at the same time in the back of my head, I'm going am I losing gains because of this? If I just and then also when I am deloading, how hard should I actually push it, or not hard? A lot of it was saying, hey, do RPE 6 or 5 on some of these. And for me, sometimes it's kind of hard for me to gauge that, even though I'm usually gauging RPE 8 to 10, getting down to 5, once you start getting lower than 8 to 7, once I get down to 5, I'm I really don't it's more of a guess than anything. And how much does it actually affect the next week for a max week? Maybe you said you did worry about strength as much, but on the strength side, but also on the hypertrophy side, for someone who's do you suggest every 3 months, maybe just 1 week? Or I know that old bodybuilders used to actually take a week off, just not even lift at all, and swore by that. But I just want to
so I definitely take a more auto-regulated approach, meaning I don't say every 3 months or every 4 weeks or anything like that. I say, how good do you feel? You feeling good? You ready to put? You still motivated to train? Your joints aren't hurting? Your numbers are still going up? Why in the fuck do we need to deload? On the other hand, if someone comes to me and they're like, hey, I don't want to train, I don't feel good, I don't want to go to the gym. We have very clear evidence now to suggest that taking a short break away from the gym is not going to hurt your gains in any way, really. So I'm certainly not going to tell them no either. So like that's kind of like to kind of like just wrap that up. Like that's my philosophy with respect to deloads. Is just that if someone wants a break, give it to them. It's probably not going to hurt them that badly, but make sure that they want the break or need it, because there's probably no reason to just because we assume that it's going to lead to better gains, give them a week away from the gym. So that's kind of like my philosophy with respect to deloads in general.
Yeah, I was when I had Bill Campbell on, he said that he takes, I think he said 1 week off every 5 weeks or something like that. But I think he's a little bit less into the, perhaps competitive ideals as like me or Cole may be.
Mhm.
So I've been taking a week off every here and there because unfortunately that's kind of been the best way for it to fit my lifestyle. Is that just about a month ago, my wife and I celebrated our 1 year married anniversary. So that week I took a week off, and then actually Thanksgiving week I didn't take a week off, but yeah, like just like whenever I travel or something like that, if I'm going to be gone for a few days, like my deadlifting day is normally Sunday because I get up real nice and early and go to the gym. That's usually the day I do deadlifting. So like, I try to generally shape my deloads around my my like vacation weeks or something like that, just because I think that's like the easiest way to work it in.
And I think that's the best way to go about it, man. Like that's
Nice.
my philosophy with respect to deloads is like
Mhm.
if you need a break, take one. It's not going to hurt you, and like try your best just to structure it around your life in general. Like that's how deloads work for most people in general, and I think that's a really good way of going about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think we could probably wrap there, Cole. I'm guessing
Yeah,
we're running out
my
of room
wife got home. She was like, "Hey, we're going to dinner. Let's go." Like,
Nice.
Yeah. I got to say goodbye to my friends, so this is actually working out quite nicely.
Beautiful, beautiful. Max, go ahead, give your plugs, and then Cole, do your plugs, and we'll get on out of here.
Sweet. Well, yeah. I mean, nothing fancy. I'm really not that many places. If if you want to find out more about what I do and future research that I've got going on, like follow me on Instagram at Coleman et al. And I'm sure we'll link it in the show notes, so it's not just me
Absolutely.
like rushing through it to say Coleman et al. Or for the real nerds out there, you can find me on ResearchGate, and that's just Max Coleman in general. So yeah, that's all there.
hell yeah,
Nice.
Max. Thanks for
And of course, yeah. Thank you guys so
yeah,
much.
it
for
was
letting
nice
me
to
come
meet you,
on.
man. I never really, I've talked to Kyle before. I never really talked. He was like, "Hey, we're gonna have a researcher from Lehman that's under Brad Schultz," and I was like, "That's fucking awesome. Let's go." So
Oh, well,
it
thank
was
you.
nice
It's
to meet you. But
talk to a fellow 256 native, man.
hell yeah,
Sweet.
Nice.
Fat Comic Dave and Tower King Cole on Twitter. Tonight is Tower Gang. So if you want to like raunchy comedy, nothing that Kyle does. He's not funny at all. So, but Kyle, thanks again for having me on, man.
Yeah, of course, guys. We'll definitely do it again. If you guys don't got anything, we'll wrap it up.
See you, boys.
Cool.
Peace.
Till next time, guys.